Never has a big screen iteration of Gotham City so strongly convinced its audience of the need for Batman as the one portrayed in Todd Phillips' Joker. From skyscrapers to streets, Gotham fails its people in this gritty 1980s inspired version of the notorious city. Joker is a long, hard stare at this iconic city from one of its most pitiable citizens, Arthur Fleck. And the final thesis of the film is that Gotham itself is the antagonist. Traditionally, Gotham has been portrayed on the big screen as a city plagued with crime. The problem is mobs, crooked cops, and kooky villains traipsing around in multicolored costumes with a pack of numbskull goons pulling off bank heists. None of that is present in Joker's Gotham. The problem in this Gotham is the inefficiency and mismanagement of the city. There is uniquely no outside force to point to as the source of Gotham's woes. If Joker could be reduced to a commentary on any single issue, many would argue that it's about the failure of mental health care. This is true to a point. Joker, in my view, is not primarily about the failure of mental health care institutions. Joker is about the failure of society, or what I'll hereafter refer to as the city, capital T, capital C. The film undoubtedly focuses the lens of the city's overall failure to address mental health care, but this is because the titular character is suffering from these sorts of maladies. If Arthur Fleck were not suffering from a slew of mental health conditions, there still would have been plenty wrong with Gotham. Arthur's life does not suddenly become unhappy or pointless once he goes off his meds. Consider. The film opens with a radio announcer explaining that sanitation workers are on strike due to budget cuts, and trash isn't being collected. Throughout the film, trash is piled up on the streets. This is a visual metaphor of the failure of the city. The second scene of the film portrays Arthur Fleck being beaten by a group of teenagers. This is not portrayed as a freak incident, but as a normal occurrence. This means that plenty of Gothamites regularly suffer this sort of thing. The shop talk of the other clowns who work with Arthur. Everyone is concerned for their job security and their physical security on the streets. Arthur's counselor is distanced and obviously overworked and underpaid. When she later tells Arthur that they'll no longer be meeting due to budget cuts, she says in so many words that the system does not care for people like him or for people like her. The city is not just failing the Arthur Flecks of the world, it is failing everyone. Joker establishes from the start that the failure of mental health care is symptomatic of the larger failure of the city as an institution. In this Gotham, everyone who is not wealthy is portrayed as suffering. To live in this Gotham is to suffer from the callousness of this Gotham. For writers, Joker provides us with one of the most exceptional uses of setting in recent memory. Setting is often presumed to be reducible to where and when a story takes place. While it is these things, it is not only these things. A third element concerns what I call circumstance, not merely the geographic or temporal elements of the story, but what is happening in the broader story world. It is, for example, nearly impossible to tell a story that takes place in the U.S. state of Virginia in 1863 without that story somehow being impacted by the American Civil War. The Civil War was a pervasive event. It defined its era. Gotham in Joker is also definitive. What is happening in the city is so detrimental to so many people that it cannot be ignored by the characters or the audience. How a writer chooses to employ a setting makes a tremendous difference in how that setting manipulates the story. In a film like You've Got Mail, the city promises secret romance. It's portrayed as full of life. It's brimming with possibilities. It's a gift to be unwrapped. Meg Ryan's character walks in the park. There are flowers, people biking and jogging, and there's a golden retriever. The city surrounds the narrative in You've Got Mail, but it's not stifling. The order the city provides is real and good. The people are busy and warm. The largeness of New York promises a type of adventure. The central elements of the city are oriented toward hope. This was a narrative choice used to reinforce the film's theme, which, as with so many other comedies, amounts to what Italo Calvino called continuity of life, as opposed to inevitability of death. By contrast, the city in Joker is oriented toward hopelessness. The city is physically dirty, it is dim even in daylight, and it seems that every person is simmering with dark emotion. Gotham is barely hanging on to its orderliness, operating at minimum efficiency, if at that. The people are harsh, cramped, and angry. The size of the city does not promise possibility, but suffocation. Joker's Gotham seems like an overcrowded prison or a dangerous, untamed jungle. This doesn't mean that happiness does not at all exist in this Gotham, but for the purposes of this particular story, we're never shown that happiness because to do so would contradict the themes of that story. Different types of stories use different aspects of the city to create certain opportunities and challenges for the central characters. Realistically, bad things happened in You've Got Mail's New York, and good things happened in Joker's Gotham. But part of the successful use of setting for a writer is to highlight some details while leaving out others altogether in order to make a point. For all intents and purposes, as a piece of narrative, Joker's Gotham is completely awful. Layers of irony are present in Joker's Gotham. The city is the place full of citizens, that's what city means, and yet, being full of citizens, Arthur Fleck is isolated, surrounded by people, yet absolutely alone. Never has any big screen adaptation of Gotham done such a good job of making the audience understand how the Joker could hate society, why he thinks its rules are arbitrary, and that morality itself is a joke. This city has failed all its citizens. There is obvious failure at a bureaucratic level in Joker in some of the ways I've mentioned earlier. Garbage isn't being collected, Arthur, not to mention a lot of other people, are denied mental health care due to budget cuts. These elements are important, but they're symptomatic of a larger issue. The larger issue is that the city is abnormal to ideal human experience because it creates inescapable irony. People are everywhere all the time, but the city fosters isolation. Arthur Fleck craves relationship. It's literally all around him, yet he can't touch it. When Arthur daydreams, he does not daydream about harming others. He daydreams about being loved and accepted, first by Murray Franklin, and later by Sophie. Arthur craves relationship, and the city denies it to him while perpetually dangling it in front of him. Ironically, Murray Franklin accuses Joker of being the cause of the turmoil in Gotham, but Franklin ignores the broader issues transpiring. While it's true that Joker is the immediate cause of the businessmen's deaths and the injuries of the detectives on the train, he's not the cause of the broader societal issues that lead to the civil unrest that would make people hold up Joker as a folk hero. The Joker exposes and highlights what is already present. The powder keg has been there. Joker is the spark, but anyone could have been that spark. Franklin's simplistic perspective is myopic. Joker taps into the deepest veins of the Batman mythos by reminding us that Batman is not just trying to save lives on the streets or to stop muggers. Batman is trying to redeem Gotham itself. Left unchecked, Gotham is a place that creates Jokers. One of the great things about Joker is that I never felt the film was talking down to me. Without ever talking about social media, technology, video games, or tritely asking if violent media creates violent people, the film shows us that the failure of the city as an institution largely concerns the failure of community. It is folly to assume that because we are near people, we are therefore with them. Some critics suggested that this film is juvenile and would score its biggest points with the veritable man-child demographic. This line of commentary is perilously ignorant for two reasons. First, because one of the purposes of this film is to expose the very ignorance these interpreters are tacitly touting.
You don't listen, do you?
Murray Franklin is right when he says to Arthur on his show, "Look what you did," but he's also wrong. It's ignorant of Murray to suggest that Arthur is solely responsible for what was going on in Gotham. It's easy to point the finger at the person in the mask. It's not easy to look in the mirror and to acknowledge the ways in which we contribute to the evil of the city. Our ignorance, our carelessness, our apathy toward the hurting, our dismissal of their suffering because they don't fit our chosen narrative of what a suffering person looks like. and how they should behave. The truth is more unfortunate and more obvious. No person or people owns a monopoly on suffering. To be human is to suffer in one form or another, whether it be from other people or from nature. Joker portrays for us the perpetuation of suffering through the lens of a particular person. There is a perilous double standard being employed by anyone who would dismiss Arthur Fleck as pathetic and juvenile. To dismiss the character is to dismiss his experience, and to dismiss those who have endured something akin to that experience. The second reason this line of commentary is perilously ignorant is that we are all Arthur Fleck. If we stop to think, all of us can identify with one or more aspects of his life because we have experienced something analogous to it. Mental illness, physical frailty, isolation, poverty, lack of identity, bullying. It's not juvenile for a person to react unhealthily to so much unhealthiness, and anyone who's ever reacted badly to so much bad knows this is true. Some people aren't equipped to just get over it. Dismissing their pain because they're not members of our chosen tribe is the heart of hypocrisy. One of the most pitiable things about Arthur Fleck is that he was denied relationship and community throughout his descent into the Joker. This doesn't justify what the Joker or any supposed real-life corollary may have done, but we can see why he became what he became. Gotham and Joker is layer upon layer of wrongness. The obvious corruption that leads to mismanagement of city budget, the wealthy's apparent refusal to help their fellow citizens, and the failure or inability of everyone in Arthur's life to acknowledge all the red flags that were being thrown up. The character is pitiable. We understand him without agreeing with him, and a fair viewing of the film forces us to examine the ways in which we ignore or marginalize the Arthur Flecks of the world.